This is The Antidote with Dave Hawkins, where Christian music doesn't suck. The World of the Dead from Leper. Thanks for joining the Antidote, where Christian music doesn't suck. You know, when I recorded this interview with Skot Shaw of Leper, it was one of those perfect hot summer days. But today's a whole different thing, with all the rain, snow, and freezing rain that's been coming down, making huge puddles in everybody's yard. But all this weather gives you a perfect excuse just to sit back in a comfy chair and give all your attention to the music of Leper. Goth rock has only really a small niche in the music scene. And it's even a smaller niche in the music created by Christian artists. But it's far from being insignificant, and Leper is one of the best. Leper's Skot Shaw and I had a great time talking about the nature of his art, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, witches, the music he enjoys, and one of my favorite topics, coffee. Enjoy. The Antidote meets with Skot Shaw of Leper. Scott, we've been having some fun prior to this interview starting. Thanks for meeting.
Sure. What else am I going to do?
Yeah, you have nothing better to do this morning than talk with me.
That, and well, I could be sucking down some more coffee, but pretty well caffeinated at this point.
Getting to the States, this is the first time I've had a decent coffee.
Yeah.
Bad coffee is the norm?
It depends on where you go.
Okay.
I am a coffee snob. It's one of the few things I feel okay about being snobby about. Generally, the idea of snob just infuriates me. But I just can't drink that stuff from a gas station. As much as I hate to admit it, Starbucks usually makes a good cup of coffee. But you got to ask for dark roast, because they give you that light roast stuff. It's bleh.
Okay, so now we've covered coffee. How about we talk about music?
Okay.
Goth rock is the basis of the music of Leper. But Scott, are you personally part of the goth scene?
I'm not really sure how to answer that. I am a bit of an introvert.
That's coming through, that you're very introverted.
Oh, yeah. I can't explain that, but I have I guess, split personality. When I'm just Scott at home, I'm pretty quiet. When I start looking like this, and I'm all fixed up, and I'm in this element, like at a show, or I suddenly become extroverted. I still cannot walk up to a total stranger and just start talking, no matter what I'm doing. I just can't do it. Maybe at a venue I could do it because you're there at the venue, I'm here at the venue, and I'm here to do a show. And if it looks like you're here to see me perform, then I can extrovert a little bit. But yeah, I'm pretty quiet. I feel like I was supposed to be answering a different question there. Oh, I know a lot of people in the Chicago goth scene. I guess I'm pretty big presence in the Christian goth scene now. I don't know how big. For all I know, there's only like 10 people, Christian goths, that know who I am. I guess I'm okay with that.
Oh, come on, because you do have the longevity. I mean, you've been in it, since 2000?
Something like that. Yeah, I think so. And before that, I was doing stuff around Cleveland where I was growing up. Just like coffee house, open mic kind of stuff. Yeah, like I said, I don't really hang out in goth clubs, per se.
The reason I was bringing that up, a lot of artists just come out and they're trying to set themselves up into a specific music scene, but they're not actually involved in it.
I don't want to be exclusive to a specific music scene. I'm an artist, and my art just happens to have a dark presence about it, a dark look. I like minor chords. I can't play R&B stuff, just not interested. I can't play metal, I'm not capable, and I'm not interested. I just like to create art. If people want to associate me with goth, then I'm okay with that, because that's what I mainly listen to in a lot of Christian goth bands.
for years. It has flowed. Always out as I may, I cannot seem to stop. I cannot seem to stop
Do you find it that there's any, ambiguities between the goth scene and Christianity?
I think yes and no. There's a lot of misconceptions on both sides. That's been pretty frustrating. A lot of non-goth people have this absurd idea that goth is some sort of witch religion, which goth has nothing to do with any religion. It's really just a form of art. It comes from terms of architecture. It comes from, old black and white horror movies. It certainly doesn't have anything to do with Trenchcoat Mafia. I don't even know what to say about that. Just for the record, the Columbine shooters in Colorado a few years ago, they were not goth kids. They were just kids. They had no connection to the goth scene. I think they had a Marilyn Manson CD in their collection, along with a gazillion other CDs in their collection, because at the time he was selling a lot of stuff. That was their only connection. So why in the world the media chose to call it a goth crime is just mind-boggling. But on the other side, goth tend to think that the church doesn't want them around, doesn't like them. We don't like them. We don't like the way they look. We don't like what they sound like. We don't like what they're doing with all that witchcraft stuff, which most goth kids are not really doing a lot of witchcraft. I mean, maybe they are now. I've had some conversations with some kids. We did a show in Detroit. This kid, he had invited us out knowing we were Christians, but because he had seen us at another show and had not put the connection at the time, he said something just out of the blue. He's like, I don't get you guys. I mean, I don't get it. You're Christians, but you're not judging anybody. You're approachable, you're friendly, and you're accepting. And of course, me standing there with wearing a corset and a veil, I was like, yeah, I don't think I have room to judge anybody on anything. So
it moves through the night, ruin everything in its path. Nothing left standing, leave nothing intact. Nothing worth saving, no escaping that fact. Crush, kill, destroy. Crush, kill, nothing left standing, nothing intact. My rage still swelling, changes nothing, no escaping that fact. Crush, kill, destroy. Crush, kill, destroy. Crush, kill, destroy. Crush, kill, destroy.
Crush, Kill, Destroy from Leper's Goodbye Cleveland album. It's really amusing when I was reading your site, and you were talking about your music. I'm going to read this off. A darker Pink Floyd, an edgier Cure with some Nine Inch Nails mixed in. Once you see it written down, it makes sense, but I'd love to hear you describe the music of Leper.
Nonsensical. It's all smoke and mirrors. You know, we actually Milli Vanilli everything. We don't play, we don't sing. I had Amy Lee from Evanescence do all my vocals for me. It's on a track, and I'm just kidding.
And that's what makes it easier when you're hiding behind a veil.
Well, really, I'm not sure how to answer that question. When I was little, I was really into a band called Res Band. You know, they were my heroes. They were who I wanted to grow up to be. And now, of course, I live with them, so that's pretty cool. I was into a lot of different things. I mean, I was into a lot. I hate to say it, but I was into a lot of metal bands because the kids I was hanging out with, that's what they were into. So, being a Christian, I was really only interested in Christian music as a residual effect of being a Christian. My wife, she was really into goth music, but she didn't know anything about Christian music. She wasn't a Christian at the time. She was just a girl she was really cute. She was really pretty and fun to hang out with, so I was chasing her. And now I was challenged to find some kind of Christian music that was along the line of what she listened to. I found Savior Machine and Mortal, Deity-Phobia, The Awakening, and discovered that these guys were doing all the things that I kept waiting for all these metal bands to do, but they weren't doing it. So obviously, I don't need this stuff anymore, and I finally found a home. It wasn't really so much even just goth. There's a band called Starflyer 59. I really love them. They can't do anything wrong. Especially their newer stuff is like just flabbergasting good. Or The Choir is another They're probably one of my biggest influences, I think. So, not being really influenced by goth music, I'm not really sure why Leper sounds like it does, because it's influenced by so many other things. As a kid, I never really listened to Pink Floyd until, really, I think maybe 2 years ago. I sat down and I went through their whole discography just out of curiosity, and couldn't understand how in the world they came up with all my ideas so many years before I came up with them. But so apparently I must have heard some of their stuff as a kid. I know I've heard The Cure as a kid, and I'm sure they were like a subconscious influence, even though I wasn't like actively listening. I don't know, maybe that's just a God thing. You say, here's what I want you to play, and who knows.
An interesting twist on the sound of Leper from the Filth release. Here's Griffins. We brought up the point earlier about you starting in 2000. You've put out a ton of music since then. How many albums have you actually done?
Well, if we had access to Bandcamp right now, I could look that up, but I'm not really sure. I feel like somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 or 15. Of course, they're mostly all like self-released, self-recorded. There's 3 albums that I have that are legitimate out of Gur Records, and where the production quality is really, really upscale and pristine. Sometimes I like the lesser quality recordings better. There's something magical in the performances there. I think a lot of indie fans probably would agree with that.
Well, how about if I take you on a bit of a stretch and actually have you go back and give me a brief word about some of your past recordings? The original one, I guess, Filth, back in 2000.
That's actually not original. There was previous stuff before that. But Filth, it was a collaboration between me and my friend who was playing bass at the time. His name's Dan. He was really into a lot of Norwegian black metal. So when you listen to that record, you do hear certain elements of that in there. I didn't necessarily want that in there, but I can't tell the guy I'm working with, sorry, your opinion doesn't count, because that's completely wrong.
It depends on how much bigger he is than you are.
We're about the same, but I mean, his mouth is probably bigger. He's a bit snarkier than I. I'm too sensitive to be snarky, so. But he was a good guy, and he had a lot of really good ideas. He wanted to make all our stuff really super long, which I kind of agreed with him. A lot of our stuff is long because the kind of art that we're doing doesn't lend itself to a 3-minute song. It wouldn't work. It takes 3 minutes just to get your intro out of the way, and now you could do the song. And the song has got to be 4 because it doesn't work any other way.
Well, this is the one that introduced me to Leper, was Kreischen in 2005. That really grabbed my attention.
That's a German word, means screaming or shrieking or something like that. Anyway, it's, of course, that again, Dan was still with me at the time, and it still has some of that metal influence. I think less. We started getting more death rock, more of that 80s British post-punk sound that I really, really wanted. Going into like the realms of The Cure. Like I said, we're trying to reach for a little bit of that Baja's feeling too, and I think it's eluded us so far. But that one has a bit more of that 9 Inch Nails variation. The last 3 or 4 songs definitely has that Pink Floyd feel. Maybe not quite as much as I would like it to have. There's just a certain atmosphere that I really enjoy in a song that really takes its time to build. It just has that really smooth, laid back, I feel like my life is a movie right now kind of feeling.
It's time for justice, little one!
carrying on with that, you did And Everybody Died.
That one, now at that point, Dan had moved on, and he was replaced by two other guys, one of which just didn't make it for long. There's a lot of time in between those two records, though, maybe 3 or 4 years. But that was a little further into the whole death rock thing. You know, I was able to really get away from the metal side. I had gone through 2 bass players and a keyboard player in between those 2 albums. A good friend of mine named Kenny Dale, who would have been on that album had he not moved right before we went in to start working on it. He wrote most of the bass lines on there, which is a lot of what drives Leper. Yeah, I don't really do anything. I'm not that guitar player. I'm just holding a chord. There's something really intriguing to me about striking a chord and just letting it ring for all it's worth, and then letting a bass do everything else in the drum machine. We started getting more into keyboards at that point. The title, of course, my wife came up with that because she's just funny. I think we had been watching a lot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and she said something that the way she phrased it, it was a lot of times I feel like I'm talking to Drusilla from that show. She's this kooky nut vampire girl. Something's not quite there. Her marbles are all mixed up. And my wife will say things every now and then that's on par with this character. And she thought that name would just be fun. It'll freak people out. This is Skot Shaw of Leper with The Antidote with Dave Hawkins.
Riding yourself
Then you went mellower with the next album title, and you did
well.
Beautiful Gray Day.
That was kind of as a result of a challenge with the guy that runs Gurr Records. I don't remember how he got on the subject, whether or not acoustic guitar belongs in goth music. He was saying, I don't think acoustic guitar would work with goth music. So I was challenged now to write a whole album with just acoustic guitar.
And it really does work.
Yeah.
I was surprised to find that.
Well, I mean, like the forerunners of goth music are like The Cure, and most of their stuff is a 12-string acoustic. Their electric is just decorating on top of that. If you look into any of the forerunners of what we know as goth music, you're going to hear a lot of acoustic guitar. And of course, with Gurr, and well, a lot of people now that in general, not Gurr, but just people, not coming from that scene, they're coming from everything's Led Zeppelin to them, and they didn't know what goth was until I came along. Everywhere I go, when I make any mention that I play goth music, they think I'm talking about black metal, or they think I'm talking about Evanescence or Him, and that's not goth, that's metal. Or they may think I'm talking about Marilyn Manson. That's not goth, that's metal.
And it sounds like nitpicking in a fine line, but it's not a fine line. It's an enormous line.
Yes, goth music is pretty broad. There's a lot of different stylings of goth even. I mean, there's a band from Australia called Virgin Black. To me, they can do no wrong. I mean, they're amazing. Make no mistake, they are gothic, but they are metal. They use a lot of classical guitar, and yeah, they're fantastic. Really, like if you put them next to The Cure, you get two things that don't make sense together, which is odd because they are both technically considered goth. But then if you put Nine Inch Nails in there, hey, they're like so far off left field. They have nothing to do with these other two, but they're still associated with goth scene somehow.
Well, you know what I think you need to do, Scott, is that we're going to put the job onto you to start defining subgenres of goth.
That's been done by so many people, and it's just a headache.
I mean, it's worked this way with metal, so why not with goth?
Well, it's like anything, even punk. And here's what most people don't seem to realize is that goth came from the early 70s British punk movement. It did not come from the American metal movement. No idea how that thing got dreamed up.
Don't tell me what to do. I will not submit to you. My moral standard is my own. Oppressive obligation die your throne. My only desire is to flee. I will not be denied. Do as thou wilt. Everyone suffers. Do as thou wilt. Nobody wins. Do as thou wilt. Makes you even. Do as thou wilt. To the heretic's end. I will not be forgiven, for I am not that scared, just vacantly staring, admiring my reflection and all that I've acquired. Is there credit for trying? Does it just mean I'm lying? Could it be that I'm buying one more nail.
And that proves that Scott was right. Acoustic goth really does work. And that was a great example. Do As Thou Wilt, off the Beautiful Grey Day album. Let's go back to our talk with Skot Shaw of Leper. I know what I wanted to ask you about. 2013, you did a concept album.
Hexamprosis, yes. Oh, that was a good time. My wife has this weird fascination with witches and witch stories. Documentaries, historical stuff. Not so much the Harry Potter version of witches, because that's something different. No, her fascination is when witches were villains, and you had to somehow find out who it was, and then you had to figure out how you're going to defeat this witch, because they're going to get you. Having them villains was more intriguing than having them friendly, to us. Maybe that's just our old-fashioned frame of mind, or I don't know. But Hexamprosis was, we had been watching a documentary on the Salem witch trials. If what we were watching in the documentary, if it was true, what I felt like I was seeing was people of influence wanted something, or people, they had influence but they didn't have anything. They just wanted something. All they had to do was claim their neighbor was a witch, and now all of their belongings belong to them. So it was a way of manipulating the system. Anybody who knows anything about that whole scene, there was these 3 young girls that started the whole thing. They were hanging out with a slave girl who was showing them that by cracking an egg and dropping it in water, whatever shape it took would suggest what kind of guy they would marry someday. So it's probably, just this little parlor game. They're not really trying to conjure the devil or whatever. They're just being young teenagers. And they got caught. And so living in a Puritan, society, if they get caught doing that kind of stuff, they're in big trouble. So they panicked and started making these outrageous claims that the devil was taking over and they were being forced, and the town went nuts. This was their way of getting out of trouble, really. But then they started to realize that they had a lot of attention. It makes sense that they would play that up. People will always do this. If you think you can get attention doing something, whether it's questionable or not, you're probably going to do it because the attention is fun. So they became like rock stars. And they were taken from town to town to name witches. So what I see in this whole thing in relation to today, the statement I wanted to make with that is how a lot of people will use Christianity and religion to justify some sort of social crime. And there's a lot of people that will claim that Christianity is all bad because that's what it does. But the reality is, I don't believe that God would have stepped into Salem, Massachusetts and said, let's kill all these witches and just start taking out innocent people. So now you got all these innocent people being hanged for all kinds of different reasons that never really had anything to do with righteousness. They did things in the name of Christianity that was completely wrong. This isn't God's will, that these people were to be killed. And the record comes from the perspective of Martha Corey, who was allegedly the last person to be hanged as a witch. So it's pretty deep. I guess it's a lot of statements I'm trying to make. But the overall is, don't try to blame God for the crimes of people who claim that they're doing something in God's name. If they're committing a crime, they're not doing it in God's name. They're doing it in their own, and they're just hiding behind God as a way to justify themselves.
Liars in God's Eye, off the Hexen Process release by Leper. I really appreciated Scott's insights into his music and the goth community. It just gives you a better vibe on what it's really all about. Well, thanks for listening to The Antidote, and you're going to want to be sure to tune in during the next few weeks because we're going to have some really awesome guests. Lacey Sturm comes with her new solo album, Life Screams. We'll get into the instrumental music of Comrades. And we're also going to share what unfortunately became the very shortest interview ever with the man who's described as the voice of Creed, Scott Stapp. Well, next week is really special also as we speak with Spencer Chamberlain about his busy life as the frontman for Sleepwave and all about the return of Under Oath. Well, we're going to head back to our talk with Leper and a new and unusual track he's just put out called Why Must It Be? See y'all next week. Skot Shaw, Leper, are you ever going to run out of songs?
No. I've been praying about that a lot lately. You know, I don't do as many shows these days that I want to do. I know I have a lot more in me to write. I believe that I can only run out of songs when it no longer is important to make a statement about something in society. And that's probably never going to end. There will always be something that needs to be said. As long as there's something that needs to be said, there has to be a song about it. I posted on Bandcamp a new record that is really just a bunch of experiments. I threw it all together like super fast. You know, it's called Minimal. I'm kind of waiting to record. It's a collection of about 15 songs that I'm hoping I can work with Good Records. I have 3 other albums, like full-length group of songs. They're like 10 or so songs apiece that each one is completely different. I have a collection of more acoustic songs. You know, they're a little folky, but they're still, you know, death rock. Then I have this other thing I'm working on I intend it to be way more Pink Floyd than I've ever done. Like super droney and dark. And then I have another 10 to 15 songs that are definitely Nine Inch Nails sounding. And I have other ideas that I haven't started on yet.
And Bandcamp is the place to come and find the music of Leper.
Yes, that you can find everything there. You can also find their 3 albums on Gur Records website. Maybe what we'll start doing in the future anyways is doing all my bass parts with, I'll just play them on the keyboard and make it really, really laid back. Haven't decided. Who knows?
The Antidote's been here with Skot Shaw of Leper. Man, Scott, thanks. It's been great.
You're welcome.